and a family in Denmark. I mean, I imagine if you had a secret family, what a lovely place to keep them.
How do I handle my mental health? Not always great, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, I certainly have my own little rituals and stay grounded and kind of, keep my mind from spinning out of control. But, sometimes I'm really good at it and sometimes I'm not. But yeah, I do.
Hi friends, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel. Today, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively's attorney sat in court and used a lawyer to criticize, discredit, and push a narrative to their captive audience, one that paints Justin Ballon and his team as dangerous individuals. This narrative was not only deeply troubling, but also at times extremely unsettling. It appeared to be a diversion tactic, a strategy designed to manipulate the press and steer public perception. With reporters on the phone, it seemed like a calculated effort to control the story, especially since they're struggling to maintain public support. And what did they gain from today's hearing? Headlines. Headlines that framed Justin Ballon and his team as dangerous, accusing them of trying to sell information, weaponizing the details they obtained through discovery and leaking. Because it holds value in the media. To them, it's powerful PR. With a captive audience, there are people on their side who would be more than willing to sell this information to the highest bidder. But beyond that, they wanted the public to believe that Justin Ballon and his team are truly a threat. What hasn't been lost on me throughout this media coverage is how few major outlets are actually willing to dig into the case Justin Ballon has laid out against Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Instead, publications like the LA Times, the New York Times, People magazine, and others, including The Hollywood Reporter and the Daily Mail, seem to follow a pattern that often plays out in the media. If you criticize someone like Ryan Reynolds, you risk losing access to him. You lose the chance to interview him. You could even be blacklisted from speaking with other stars connected to him or the studios he works with. If you publish anything critical, you'll lose access to Blake as well. The media prioritizes Ryan and Blake far more than they do Justin Ballon. To them, Ryan and Blake hold greater value, which is why you'll rarely see negative press about them. The only time you might is if one of them were to be arrested. That's because they've mastered the art of playing the long game when it comes to narcissism. They've carefully built a public persona that isn't real, a crafted image, designed for the spotlight. And today in court, they even admitted that if certain information were obtained through communications involving Blake or Ryan, if damaging information about them or their celebrity friends were to come out, their reputations could suffer so much that their careers might never recover. When your brand and public image aren't based on who you truly are, anything you say in private has the power to destroy it. And that brings us to the illusion of celebrity. Who are they really trying to protect? One name comes to mind: Taylor Swift. Now, I don't know how deeply Taylor Swift is involved in this entire situation, but we do know a few things. She was at the penthouse the night they tried to get Bond to accept Ryan's version of the rooftop scene. We also know her music was featured in the film, a major feat considering this wasn't a high-budget production. This was an indie film that later secured distribution from Sony. Sony was only the distributor. They weren't the studio behind the project. The film was actually produced by Wayfarer. So how did Taylor Swift end up lending her music, getting involved in discussions about that pivotal rooftop scene, and yet somehow managing to avoid any public scrutiny? And why has she seemingly distanced herself from Blake and Ryan? The urgency with which they argued about protecting third parties lines up with something interesting. Earlier this week, a source connected to Bond's legal team revealed that the first round of subpoenas had already been sent out. Among those being contacted as potential witnesses are individuals who, the last thing that America's sweetheart would want is to be caught in the middle of a case filled with accusations of extortion, threats, bullying, harassment, and theft. The last thing Miss America's sweetheart would want is to be exposed. As someone who helped her friends hijack a film through intimidation, threats, and extortion, they are desperate to keep her communications private, because if the truth gets out, Taylor's carefully crafted reputation could take a serious hit. And here's where it gets interesting. They're seeking a protective order for discovery. But discovery hasn't even been requested yet. They don't even know what evidence exists, yet they're already trying to shield it. They still have months, 4, 5, maybe even 6, before they need to produce discovery. But they're already panicking. This is why it all feels so staged. And the reason? Taylor Swift. She is the key player here, and they're scrambling to make sure no one finds out what she did, how she did it, or why. Taylor Swift has a powerful PR team, one that can shape her public image to make her look flawless. But let's be real, no one is perfect. And let's not pretend Taylor is some exception. There's no such thing as America's sweetheart. It's a brand, a carefully built image, one that's impossible to maintain forever. History proves it. There have been countless America's sweethearts before Taylor. There will be countless after her. And almost every single one has fallen, because no one can live up to that illusion. Ryan and Blake are terrified of Taylor, and of the information that could come out. Why? Because it would expose a side of Hollywood that is calculated, ruthless, and exploitative. It would confirm what many of us already suspect. This industry chews people up, spits them out, and steps on the little guys just to stay on top. Taylor Swift is now publicly distancing herself from Blake, and she hasn't said a single word in Blake's defense. And let's not forget, this is a woman who took a man to court for sexual harassment after he grabbed her without consent. When he sued her for defamation, she fought back and won. She stood by Kesha when she spoke out against her producer. Taylor has never been afraid of controversy. Yet now, silence. And when someone as powerful as Taylor Swift stays silent, it speaks volumes. Blake Lively made Taylor Swift, someone she's only known for about a decade, the godmother of 3 of her children. Blake has sisters, she has lifelong friends, she has family. Yet somehow, Taylor became the choice. It feels strategic, a way to attach Taylor to their family in a public, almost permanent way. That's Hollywood. That's social climbing, and now they are desperate to keep her text messages hidden. But make no mistake, this protective order won't shield celebrity conversations. Why? Because those messages aren't classified as highly confidential. They aren't private discussions between best friends. In legal terms, any communication involving a lawsuit party or a witness can be used in discovery. It's not a secret that Taylor Swift spoke to Blake, but the fact that they're trying to make it a secret, just because she's famous, is a complete manipulation of the legal system. And here's the truth. Judges don't grant protective orders just to hide celebrity. Messages, what's more likely to get hidden, the deeper, more troubling reality inside Blake and Ryan's home. Ryan Reynolds has spoken openly about his crippling anxiety for years. And the way he handles it? Ryan Reynolds has a unique way of handling his anxiety. And by unique, I mean he doesn't actually treat it. Instead, he meditates and overbooks himself. He has never spoken about taking medication, going to therapy, or following traditional treatment methods. Instead, he relies on coping mechanisms that don't necessarily improve anxiety. And when anxiety becomes debilitating and remains untreated, it can spiral out of control, turning someone into a version of themselves they don't even recognize. In October 2023, right around the time all of this drama with Boney was unfolding, and just as Boney was being accused of harassment and predatory behavior, Ryan was on the red carpet, telling Page Six that his anxiety was out of control. He openly admitted that his mind spins into overdrive. And when that happens, it's tough on him and tough on his family. His solution? Meditation and overworking himself. No medication, no therapy. And he even admitted on October 11th, 2023, that his mental health was not in a good place. Now, speaking from experience, since I personally have GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, and ADHD, when anxiety spirals, it can mess with your mind. It can make you believe things that aren't real. It can convince you that danger is looming. It can make you accuse people of things they haven't done. It can even lead to paranoia. And if Ryan isn't getting professional help, if he isn't learning how to manage the panic attacks or the paranoia, then it's only going to get worse. He has admitted in the past that he used drugs and alcohol to cope in his 20s. He lost several close friends to overdoses, and he said that's what woke him up. That's when he chose to leave that life behind. But let's not forget, during lockdown, Ryan told Stephen Colbert that he spent most of his time isolated, drinking gin with his family, and on the welcome. To Wrexham series on Hulu, his own business partner, Rob, even joked that while he was doing the work, Ryan was probably off getting drunk. So what's really going on? One reason they might be so paranoid about this lawsuit is that Ryan has spent years advocating for mental health awareness. He's always talked about how important it is to speak up. But the truth is, if he isn't properly treating his anxiety, than the paranoia and delusions that come with it. Anxiety and delusions can often go hand in hand, and while anxiety is one thing, delusions are also commonly seen in people with narcissistic personality disorder. Now, it's not exactly the same thing, but when someone with NPD feels like they're losing control, paranoia and anxiety can spiral into something much worse. Ryan doesn't want people to know the truth, that when his anxiety gets dark, he turns into an angry monster, that he loses his temper and screams at people, like he did with Justin Baldoni, during the very period when Ryan himself admitted that his mental health was spiraling. There were 2 separate occasions when he had full-blown meltdowns, both directed at Boney. The first incident happened in April 2023, when Ryan lashed out at Boney, screaming at him over a supposed fat-shaming comment about Blake, when in reality, that never happened. He demanded to know why Boney would even ask about his wife's weight. Then, on January 4th, 2024, just 8 months later, Ryan freaked out again. This time, in front of executives at Sony, A-list producers, and countless other witnesses. There is zero chance that Ryan can deny that ever happened. His own history of openly discussing his debilitating anxiety isn't going to help his case at all. Because here's the thing. If they're claiming that Justin Baldoni caused them emotional distress, and they want punitive damages for it, they have to prove that their suffering was caused by him. And that's how they would get their multi-million-dollar payout. But here's the catch. Today, in court, the argument kept coming back to one thing: severe psychological and mental illness. Because if Blake and Ryan were already dealing with serious mental health struggles before any of this happened, then how can they claim that their distress was a direct result of what Boney allegedly did? If they were already suffering from anxiety, depression, or other psychological issues beforehand, then it's going to be very hard for them to convince a court that this situation made it worse, and that could completely destroy their claim. For damages, now, my guess, Blake was struggling with postpartum depression. Ryan has severe untreated anxiety, and together, they were both spiraling. It was a storm waiting to happen. And if you've seen Ryan lately, he's aged significantly. He doesn't even look like himself anymore. On top of that, he's been making questionable comments and joking about using meth and cocaine, which is, it's so weird because Ryan is 47 or 48 years old, and it's obvious that there are serious mental health struggles happening here. Now that doesn't excuse their actions, but they don't want Justin or anyone else to see it. Because if the truth gets out, it'll prove that they were already struggling, and that this whole situation is fueled by their own paranoia, mental health issues, or even narcissism. Now, technically speaking, narcissistic personality disorder isn't a mental illness. It's a personality disorder. It can be treated, but not very effectively. And if either of them has been diagnosed with something like this, it's going to be a huge problem for their case. That's why they're desperate to keep it private. I honestly believe there are major issues going on behind the scenes. And in my opinion, Ryan is struggling with some kind of substance abuse problem. Why? Because in the past year alone, he's openly talked about meth and cocaine. And let's be real, that's not something people casually joke about. I also think his lawyers were desperate to protect those discovery materials because Taylor Swift's messages could seriously implicate her in all of this. They are clinging to whatever is left of their connection with her because she's their kid's godmother, and they know that if they go down, Taylor could go down too. But let's be honest, that friendship? Probably already over. Now, the fact that they admitted that these messages could cause irreparable damage to their careers, that tells me that something shady happened here. At least, that's my assumption. And I also think they're trying to hide Ryan's substance use, his mental health struggles, and possibly Blake's postpartum depression. Because if they were already struggling with these issues beforehand, it destroys their claim for pain and suffering. If Blake was already being treated for mental health issues before any of this happened, then she can't argue that this situation caused it, and if they can't prove where the pain and suffering began, they're not going to win this case. And let me tell you, winning pain and suffering claims in cases like this, nearly impossible. At the end of the day, they're trying to cover for Taylor, but Taylor is going to have to answer for this, and I'm here for it. Because America's sweetheart? Yeah, that doesn't exist. But what do you guys think? Tell me in the comments below. And don't forget, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know if you think this is the real issue. Tell me everything. Bye, guys!